a population cap placed on the agency by a three-judge panel. Stacking prisoners high and tight like oily cords of human firewood forces us to compete like savages for scarce resources. Negative resources are tattooed on our minds. Riots, stabbings, and fights, not to mention the homies carted off to the hole, the infirmary, or the morgue, are all too familiar sights. While most taken to the hole are guilty of something, many have not done what is charged, or nothing at all. After the August stabbings, without an iota of evidence, a friend of mine had been charged with orchestrating one of the assaults. Every document had been falsified in a sad example of police work. While the right to seek redress against the government is absolute, the courts give wide deference to the actions and decisions of correctional officials. Hitting an apex in the tough-on-crime 1990s, the civil liberties of prisoners had been completely stifled until serious officer misconduct at the notorious Pelican Bay State Prison blew up in their faces. Officers attempted to suppress numerous instances of guard-on-prisoner assaults, and the media discovered a cover-up going all the way to Edward Almeida, the director of what was then the CDC. Under the threat of a federal contempt charge, he resigned in 2003, citing personal reasons. Despite the ensuing scrutiny, including federal oversight and unending negative media, a higher standard of peace officer has not materialized. Fighting the good fight. Prison administrators can always be counted on to viciously reciprocate. It's the nature of the game. Following the August 2006 stabbings, after confiscating from the population mass quantities of personal property under the catch-all label of contraband, the officers made sure white prisoners would bear the brunt of the administration's nefarious quid pro quo. This time us, next time prisoners of color. Waves of punitive methodologies are unleashed just to let us know who's in charge. It's difficult to pinpoint exactly what I did during this lockdown to become a target of corrupt officials. I've covered many facets of prisondom for numerous publications. These legal actions don't coalesce with the malicious goals of prison officials. A complete ban on the press implemented in the tough-on-crime 1990s gave corrections a much-desired cloak of secrecy. Penitentiaries are closed societies by their very definition. Keeping investigative journalists out of prison gives agents of government absolute power. Incarcerated activists like me are an anomaly. Corrupt government officials have little respect for free speech. Whether they are covering up malfeasance or choosing not to weather some well-deserved criticism in the press, the CDCR will never voluntarily end their embargo on free speech. Retaliation is assured. The Constitution is the ultimate loser. My activism took shape in late 2006. On behalf of those on lockdown, I filed an administrative appeal in October. Severed family ties caused by the total denial of all visitors for months based on race, not individual culpability, motivated me to file the administrative class action. Exercising my rights on multiple levels, I also covered the story for a publication for whom I served as an inside reporter. With corrections mired in crisis, one must take chances. Medical was placed in total federal receivership, and perhaps, if enough prisoners speak, the entire corrections agency would face a similar fate. Overcrowding brought the CDCR to the precipice of overcapacity. The federal judiciary hovered over the prison system like an angry patient. The time to act was now. Though few constitutional protections exist for those who lawfully express themselves in a literary or litigious manner, at some point those able to must be willing to make a stand. Generally motivated by a sense of social responsibility, not gang or race-based intolerance, I placed cause over self. Falsified evidence. Such were the factual circumstances under which the guards took me to the hole. Having already worn me down for months of lockdown, my captors then took me to an even worse place. To the harbingers of correctional sorrow, incarcerated activist is synonymous with institutional transgressor. On the morning of October 13th, 2006, I found myself seated and handcuffed in front of R&R. The abundance of racial tattoos and lengthy rap sheets amongst my co-defendants, and my lack thereof, had me horribly miscast for this production of The Usual Suspects. As if being treated like a recently captured enemy combatant wasn't bad enough, each of us had been served identical documents alleging our instrumental roles, quote, in promoting racial unrest, end quote, as members or affiliates of the skinheads. I'm not a gangbanger, not one to accept total fabrication of charges without a vicious court battle. I took such charges very serious. Instinctive reflexes on how to fight false charges fired in the back of my mind, but the first order of business involved survival. Memories resurfaced. The 6 months in 1999 I spent in the Security Housing Unit, SHU, in Corcoran had shaped me. Corcoran SHU is infamous. Throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, Corcoran applied a morbid doctrine of pitting rival gang members against each other on concrete exercise yards. Roughly 50 men were shot point blank. 7 were killed. Forced to fight their rivals, these human beings had been executed under a murderous shooting policy. Nothing has changed. One horrible policy is replaced by an even worse procedure to be administered by yet another carbon copy prisoncrat cut from the same piece of shit. When I arrived at Corcoran, I was mad at the world for an unjust life sentence for drugs determined to fight back. From the platform of the chair's position of the inmate council, I took on one of the most notorious prison administrations in the nation. Corcoran's administration made short work of me. After a riot between the Whites and the Crips, Corcoran's version of the Green Wall, a guard gang of sorts, sent me to the hole. So when the Susanville faction of the correctional oppressors came to get me, I felt like I'd come full circle. It did me a favor, and in Corcoran I learned how to really do time. I entered a notorious hellhole and undisciplined and angry quasi-activist. In such settings, with absolutely nothing to lose, the guards have no choice but to show respect. We give it like we get it, and the calming effect of mutual respect is almost therapeutic. I emerged a better man. I emerged an accomplished activist who desired to become a jailhouse lawyer and to start writing again. I would now rather die than submit. By the hard times that seem to be in abundance, I'm empowered. The Vortex. That Friday morning in October, an explosion of barbed wire, chain-link fence, and one man holding cages overwhelmed my senses as I entered the abyss. My heart rate elevated. The reality that a torture chamber once resembling a housing unit would serve as my new home slapped me hard in the face. My mind raced. I tried not to lose control. I had to fight back the instinct to cry out like a wolf caught in a steel trap. Girding the mind for the rigors of a supermax, the absolute bare minimum the law allows, is an exercise of extreme difficulty. I maintain control at all costs. Ritualistic greetings and salutations peppered the airwaves as a shit list enters the abyss. Those who went MIA days, weeks, and months ago welcomed us into the vortex. Eugene! I heard someone scream over all the noise. That's fucked up! Everybody knew the administration arbitrarily deemed us insurgents. My inclusion seemed like a capricious stretch of the evidence that everyone knew didn't exist. I never expected to see you in here, Day, said the guard performing my inaugural strip search. Such disingenuous small talk did little to diminish the indignation of unjustified subjugation, of being flushed down the toilet. Neither did I lied. I shrugged off his comment with a grin. Just another day at the office. My demeanor was calm. Day, you go in a cell 24/7. It was a bad dream that kept getting worse. I tried not to make eye contact. My cauldron awaited. Afterwards. If life imitates art, then my body of work chronicles my existence as an activist. One of my hometown newspapers ran a part of this piece that I drafted while on lockdown. Since the charges were so poorly crafted, I determined to flesh out the entire episode as an example of correctional corruption. My effort won third place from Penn, America. With the perpetual assistance from Jesse, my pen, P-E-N, writing mentor, I further developed two pen pieces, Cauldron and Requiem for Freddie, which won an honorable mention in 2007. Since the events of Cauldron, I feel I progressed as an advocate for social justice. After going to ADSEG in 2006, for the next couple of years my litigation took on a sense of purpose. In the whole, I met J.P. Sweller, and for him and the cause I took his poorly written prisoner appeals earning my first order to show cause. Sweller, 2007. When released from another trip to the hole in 2007, I managed to have my case joined to Sweller's. With the appointment of counsel, evidentiary hearings, and the Attorney General deposing those responsible, pressure coming from outsiders undoubtedly didn't feel so good. I broadened the scope to cover how complaints of misconduct against guards are systematically covered up. As my petition worked its way through the state courts, I found myself in a streak of litigious success. Covering an assortment of claims, I had attorneys appointed in the state and federal courts for over half a dozen guys. In 2009, I secured the release of a lifer. My all-out reactions to the actions of dirty cops made me a hero in the eyes of my people. The experience made me a better person. Advocacy is a serious business. I may be mad, but I treat it like a game. By not taking it personally, I kept my sanity. After I finally transferred, I still couldn't let it go, but a reporter at my other hometown newspaper used my case as part of a larger piece about correctional corruption. Being part of a story that led to statewide changes in the appeals process, I achieved closure. Preferring to write rather than litigate, my literary activism restarted in Soledad. Administrators in these lower-level institutions are not as quick to retaliate with felonious deviations from the law. When I determined to illuminate the injustice of forcing integration on the most volatile demographic in the carceral, a minor act of retaliation didn't warrant a response. Battles with merit and substance moved me. Since jailhouse journalists are frequent targets, McMaster's 1999, Day 2009, Huckleberry 1999, our underappreciated work deserves a place in the literature. Risks involved with intrepid expressions are universal, but the intensity of the almost automatic response by staff is decreased in the more stable carceral environments. Officials will go to great lengths to chill the effectiveness of resistance in higher custody institutions, and for those who take a stand, I am here with them in spirit. Making it out of the war zone and to Soledad feels like a miracle. Times are changing, and I am adjusting my focus. In my last year at Susanville and my first year and a half at Soledad, I've been working with a team of qualified offenders to develop and deliver evidence-based programs. With assistance of a well-connected nonprofit organization through a group we call Inside Solutions, I'm holstering some of my acidic views as I chase transcendence in the form of unleashing systemic restoration to the community. Thank you.